Welcome to our channel. Before we get started, please consider liking and subscribing so we can bring more stories like this to you.
Echoes of destruction. The air reeked of acrid smoke and melted synthetics, and oily pall cloaked the metropolis, staining the setting sun a bruised, coppery hue. What had been a vibrant thoroughfare was now a jagged scar. Wrecked vehicles lay scattered like discarded toys amid mountains of pulverized concrete. Buildings were flayed open, revealing their intimate secrets, splintered furniture, severed cables, and the spectral imprints of lives ripped from their frames. Rescue teams, grime painting streaks across their haggard faces, worked with mechanical precision. Their amplified calls dissolved into a maelstrom of wailing sirens, the spitting hiss of burning wreckage, and the keening wails of the wounded. Some wandered, bewildered and lost, through the ruins, their voices raw with desperation as they cried out familiar names. Maria? Papa? Istvan? A woman, her complexion ashen beneath a layer of grime, cradled a threadbare teddy bear, rocking rhythmically while murmuring nonsense nearby. A boy of perhaps 6 stood paralyzed by the cataclysm, his eyes reflecting a horror too profound for his age. He remained silent, transfixed by the devastation. Sergeant Dubois, his uniform ripped and helmet askew, barked commands, his voice a coarse rasp that he directed his squad toward the remnants of a bakery, the cloying sweetness of burnt sugar mingling with the nauseating tang of something unmistakably human. He'd witnessed carnage before, more times than he cared to remember, but the sheer scope of this eclipsed anything he'd ever encountered. That a chilling presentiment coiled in his gut. Across town, in the sterile, subterranean core of the Directorate's headquarters, a different kind of pandemonium reigned. Banks of fluorescent lights buzzed, reflecting on the polished conference table surrounded by grave-faced officials. Charts, diagrams, and satellite feeds littered the surface. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken anxieties and the stale tang of neglected coffee. The seismograph registered a major event. A woman in a sharp business suit declared, indicating a jagged spike on a monitor, consistent with a massive explosion. But anomalous.no prior tremors.no indication of geological instability. Anomalous how? Director Moreau, his face a canvas of worry, pressed at a man who prized order above all else. He found himself adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The energy signature, she elaborated, her voice strained. It wasn't a natural phenomenon, nor was it consistent with conventional explosives. The readings suggest something else, something previously undocumented. A ripple of unease swept through the room. Moreau silenced it with an abrupt gesture. Possible explanations? Hypotheses. A younger man, his face gaunt and pale, cleared his throat nervously. We're running simulations, sir. Preliminary models indicate a highly sophisticated explosive device, potentially weaponized technology. Moreau's jaw clenched. Weaponized technology implied intent, malice, and if her analysis of the energy signature was accurate, then this was far more than an act of terror. This was a precision strike orchestrated by a power beyond comprehension. He recalled Jason, considered his whereabouts, his knowledge. Every available screen flashed with the same agonizing story. At a reporter, dwarfed by the wreckage, her voice trembling almost imperceptibly, delivered a carefully sanitized account. Authorities are currently investigating a possible terrorist attack. While information remains limited, initial reports suggest a device, possibly concealed within a vehicle, was detonated earlier this afternoon. The investigation is ongoing, and the public is urged to remain calm and vigilant. Further details will be released as they become available. The camera lingered on the faces of the shell-shocked survivors, their expressions a study in anguish, terror, and disbelief. The reporter's voice, a spectral echo amidst the wreckage, faded into static. The news anchor, back in the studio, wore a mask of solemnity. This is a devastating blow to our city, he proclaimed. A tragedy that will forever scar our collective memory. We will continue to provide updates as they unfold. In the interim, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their loved ones. Yet, beneath the carefully crafted narrative of terrorism and national unity, a darker truth festered. The officials within the Directorate were acutely aware that this was no ordinary assault. It was a meticulously planned operation, conducted by an adversary wielding resources and technology that dwarfed those of typical terrorist cells. And Moreau harbored a sickening suspicion regarding their identity, a name he had not uttered in years, a name he fervently hoped would remain buried. But the resonating shockwaves grew stronger, and he understood that the past had returned to haunt them. The city, and perhaps the world, teetered on the precipice. The ghost of retirement. The rhythmic rasp of sandpaper against metal was the only sound in the workshop. John Bishop, his face etched with the map of a life lived hard, moved with a deliberate grace that belied his age. Sunlight, fractured by the dusty windows, illuminated the curves of the '67 Mustang he was painstakingly restoring. Each stroke was precise, each movement economical. He wasn't just sanding down rust. He was smoothing over the rough edges of his own existence. He paused, his gaze drifting to the dent in the rear quarter panel. A shadow flickered across his face, a ghost of a memory. He saw the rain-slicked streets of Prague, the desperate scramble, the sickening thud as the car crashed. Not this car. Another one. A lifetime ago. Or was it? He blinked, the workshop snapping back into focus, the scent of oil and gasoline, a far more comforting aroma than the coppery tang of blood that lingered in his phantom recollections. He took a long pull from the enamel mug beside him, the bitter coffee a familiar comfort. He traded bullets for ball joints, shadows for sunlight, retirement. He should have known it wouldn't last. The past, he was learning, had a long and unforgiving reach. The insistent buzz of the gate intercom shattered the illusion of peace. Bishop sighed, placing the sandpaper carefully on the workbench. He wiped his hands on a rag, the grease staining his already callous skin. He knew who it was before he even pressed the button. Some debts, it seemed, could never be truly paid. Who is it? He rasped into the speaker. A familiar voice, tinged with urgency, crackled back. Bishop, it's Mallory. Open the gate. He hesitated, a knot forming in his stomach. Mallory wouldn't come unless. What's this about? We need to talk. It's about Thorn. The knot tightened. Thorn. Another ghost, this one far more malevolent. He pressed the button. The heavy metal gate groaning open. He watched as Mallory's battered Land Rover bumped along the overgrown driveway, dust billowing in its wake. Mallory, leaner and more weathered than Bishop remembered, killed the engine and climbed out. His gray hair was cropped short, his eyes sharp and scanning. He moved with the coiled energy of a predator, a habit not easily shed. Place is a fortress, Bishop, Mallory said, his voice low. As he approached the workshop, he didn't offer a handshake. They were beyond such formalities. Keeps the wolves at bay, Bishop replied, gesturing for Mallory to enter. The workshop seemed to shrink with Mallory's presence, the scent of restoration mingling with the faint, metallic tang of danger. Mallory circled the Mustang, his gaze lingering on the meticulously restored chrome. Still got the touch, I see, he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. Pity you wasted it on this. Bishop ignored the barb. What about Thorn? Mallory stopped pacing and turned, his expression grim. He's gone rogue. Completely off the reservation. We lost him 2 weeks ago. Thought he'd just gone to ground. And, Bishop prompted, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. And we just discovered he's rigged the city. Bombs, Bishop, dozens of them, hidden everywhere. He's threatening to detonate the whole damn place if his demands aren't met. Bishop felt a chill creep down his spine, colder than the memory of Prague. Thorn had always been a loose cannon. But this was beyond anything he could have imagined. Why come to me? Bishop asked, his voice flat. I'm retired, washed up. You know I'm out. Mallory's eyes met his, holding a weight of unspoken history, because you're the only one who knows him well enough to stop him. You trained him, Bishop. You know his methods, his weaknesses, and... He paused, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. You owe it to them. The them hung in the air, heavy and unspoken, the faces of the innocent, the faces of the dead, the faces that haunted his dreams. Bishop looked at the Mustang, at the promise of a quiet life, at the fragile peace he had so carefully constructed that it was all about to crumble. He sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. He knew, deep down, that he had no choice. The ghost of retirement had just been evicted. Brothers in arms, enemies in war. The wrench's gritty grind against a corroded bolt echoed in Bishop's garage. A counterpoint to the bluesy murmur of an ancient radio, and a muttered curse escaped his lips. The bolt remained stubbornly fixed. Years of disuse had ravaged the '67 Mustang, mirroring the wear and tear on his own soul. Leaning into it, the wrench bit deeper, and with a protesting screech, the metal finally yielded. His phone's insistent buzz shattered the quiet. He ignored the first summons, then the second, a third followed, a persistent thrum of unease vibrating in his gut. Such relentless calls meant trouble. He snatched it up, wiping grime on a shop rag. "Bishop," he barked, his voice rusty. "John. Davies here, we're in urgent need of your assistance." The dispatcher's tone brooked no argument. He sighed, rubbing weary fingers across his forehead. "I'm retired, Davies. Remember? This grease and these gears? That's my life now. It concerns Thorne." The name landed like a physical blow. Marcus Thorne. Once a brother, now something else entirely. "What about him?" he managed, his voice strained. "He's gone off the reservation. We believe he's planning a major operation, potentially devastating. We need you to help us neutralize him. You possess unique insights into his character." Bishop's gaze locked onto the engine block, his mind a whirlwind. Thorne, a potential architect of destruction? Unthinkable. Yet, Davies wouldn't be reaching out if it weren't real. He recalled Thorne's brilliant mind, his fierce dedication, and the subtle way skepticism had begun to creep into his worldview. "What's the target?" Bishop questioned, a knot forming in his stomach. "We lack specifics, but intel indicates several downtown buildings are rigged with explosives. He's threatening detonation unless his demands are met." Bishop's eyes squeezed shut. Innocent lives, pawns in Thorne's warped vision. He conjured the cityscape, a place he had dedicated his life to safeguarding. Opening his eyes, a resolve hardened within him, he knew what needed doing. "I'm in," he confirmed, his voice now a honed blade. "Give me the details." Their inaugural mission together unfolded in the Caucasus. A swift snatch and grab. Thorne, green as could be, clutched his weapon as though it were a talisman. Bishop, already a veteran, offered a reassuring pat on the back. "Relax, rookie. Just stay close, you'll be all right." They executed the extraction flawlessly, Thorne's initial jitters dissolving into elation. Later, huddled around a flickering fire, Thorne had expounded on his ideals, his commitment to justice, his unwavering faith in the system. Bishop had merely listened, mindful of how easily those convictions could crumble. Another assignment took them deep into the Amazon, tasked with eliminating a drug kingpin bankrolling terrorist groups. Success came at a steep price. The collateral damage was catastrophic. Helpless villagers caught in the crossfire. Bishop recalled Thorne's 1,000-yard stare at the aftermath, his usual vibrancy extinguished. "Was this worth it?" Thorne had whispered, barely audible. Bishop had remained silent. Then, Prague, their objective. A crooked politician entwined with organized crime. The mandate. To discredit him, the method. A meticulously crafted smear campaign built on falsehoods. Bishop had harbored reservations, but followed orders. Thorne, however, had refused point blank. "This isn't right," he declared, his voice simmering with indignation. "We're meant to champion justice, not fabricate lies." Bishop had attempted reason, arguing that ends sometimes justify means. But Thorne was unyielding. The operation proceeded sans Thorne, creating a chasm between them. The ultimate fracture occurred a year later at a raid on a supposed terror cell in Karachi. The intel was faulty. The terrorists were merely farmers, their families huddled together in terror. The raid degenerated into a slaughter. Thorne witnessed the carnage, his features forever marked by the horror that he tried to intervene. But his pleas fell on deaf ears. He returned a changed individual, haunted by the faces of the slain. The seeds of doubt had taken root, nourished by the blood and deceit of a system he had once revered. Davies' voice snapped Bishop back to the present. "The Federal Reserve Building is primary target, followed by City Hall. That we anticipate he intends to paralyze the city, bringing it to its knees." A chilling wave washed over Bishop. Thorne wasn't merely disillusioned. He was shattered, and now, fueled by vengeance. I require a comprehensive tactical layout of the city. Bishop commanded, his voice devoid of warmth. Any and all intelligence regarding Thorne's movements. And a vehicle. Something with speed. He glanced at the Mustang, its gleaming chrome a stark reminder of the grim task ahead. Restoration would have to wait. This was shaping up to be a very long night. Following the trail. Dust motes danced in the stale air of Thorne's apartment. A mausoleum of reheated leftovers. Bishop, gloved against contamination, swept a hand across the counter. The laminate offered only frigid resistance. Thorne's obsession with order bordered on the pathological. Not a hair out of place. Surfaces wiped clean of any trace. The place felt less lived in, more like a vacant stage after the final curtain. He located the notebook tucked behind a panel in the kitchen's nether regions. Its leather cover felt worn, and the pages within teemed with Thorne's spidery script. A bizarre tapestry of diagrams, equations, and enigmatic phrases. Rook takes pawn. King to E8. Operation Nightingale. Bishop photographed each page, the camera's flash briefly piercing the gloom. Code, undeniably, and one that emanated Thorne's unique brand of warped brilliance. Moving into the living room, he surveyed its sparse furnishings. A worn armchair and a small, scarred table. A collection of maps lay scattered across the surface, meticulous topographical studies of the city. Bishop's brow furrowed. Thorne's scheme wasn't merely large-scale. It was intricate. Each map displayed circled locations. Their intersections marked with symbols mirroring entries in the notebook. "Damn it, Thorne," Bishop muttered, the sound swallowed by the oppressive silence. "What's your game?" He dedicated the next hours to his temporary command post. A barren room above a garage on the city's edge, a '67 Mustang, his perpetual project, loomed in the corner, a tangible reminder of the life he'd shelved. Instead, he squinted at grainy surveillance footage, fueled by tepid coffee, wrestling with Thorne's demented jigsaw puzzle. The footage, culled from disparate locations, loading bays, maintenance tunnels, the cellar of a derelict theater showed Thorne, always solitary, moving with chilling purpose. He arrived unburdened, lingered for the precise duration dictated by his cryptic notes, then dissolved back into the urban labyrinth. He was planting something, Bishop surmised, compact enough to bypass detection. Then there were the comms, encrypted missives zipping through shadow servers, designed to vanish seconds after being accessed. Bishop managed to snag fragments, digital echoes in a storm, enough to sketch a disturbing tableau. Thorne had enlisted a cohort, each assigned a specialized role. Codenames, Harrier, Viper, Wraith, danced in the digital void, amplifying the sense of a meticulously crafted plot. The key surfaced with a repeated phrase in Thorne's coded transmissions. "The nightingale sings at dawn." Not a threat, Bishop deduced, but a trigger. A signal for something far more sinister. Compelled by a gnawing premonition, Bishop revisited Thorne's apartment. Back in the kitchen, his focus returned to the area behind the loose panel. This time, he relied on touch. His fingers detected a subtle anomaly in the wall's surface. He applied pressure, and a section of drywall yielded, revealing a concealed alcove within, carefully arranged, lay the components of destruction. Detonators, timers, wiring, alongside containers filled with a volatile substance enough to obliterate several city blocks. The scent, acrid, metallic, unleashed a torrent of unwelcome memories, the tang of gunpowder, echoing screams, the haunting visages of the fallen. Bishop slammed the compartment shut, a wave of dread washing over him. Thorne wasn't just orchestrating a strike. He was engineering a symphony of synchronized blasts, a cascade of ruin designed to cripple the metropolis. The sheer scope paralyzed him. He understood, with sickening clarity, that neutralizing Thorne wouldn't be enough. He had to race against the clock to locate and neutralize every single device before the Nightingale's song began. The pieces were converging, and Bishop knew what was needed. He needed to inhabit Thorne's mind, to grasp the warped logic fueling him, to preempt his next maneuver. He gazed out at the distant city lights, a million lives flickering precariously. The Mustang, usually a solace, now felt like an anchor, reminder of the life he couldn't reclaim until this nightmare ended. He grabbed his phone, his expression hardening. "I need everything you have on Project Nightingale," he barked into the receiver, his voice like tempered steel. Every detail, no matter how insignificant. The true pursuit had begun. Skeptics and sabotage. The stale coffee tasted like ash, doing little to soothe the tremor in Bishop's hands that he needed to get to the police, but the metallic tang of fear coated his mouth. Thorne was a ghost, a phantom he'd thought he'd buried years ago. Now, the ghost was back, wielding explosives and fueled by a rage Bishop understood all too well. He found Detectives Miller and Davies at the precinct, buried under paperwork and radiating world-weary cynicism. He laid it all out. Thorne, the coded messages, the impending explosions. Davies smirked, a fleshy roll forming on his neck. So, you're saying this, Thorne, is going to blow up the city because he thinks the system is corrupt? Bishop finished, trying to keep his voice steady. He thinks drastic action is the only way. Miller leaned back, steepling his fingers. Sounds like a load of conspiracy theory baloney to me. Mr. Bishop, we get guys like you in here all the time, seeing shadows where there ain't none. Damn it! Bishop slammed his hand on the desk, the sound echoing in the cluttered room. I know Thorne that I served with him. He's not some nut job. He's smart, resourceful, and he's capable of anything. Davies sighed, the sound like air escaping a punctured tire. Look, Mr. Bishop, we appreciate your concern, but we're dealing with real problems here. Armed robberies, domestic disputes, a cat stuck in a tree. We don't have time for your Hollywood fantasy. Bishop stared at them, the weight of their skepticism crushing him. He was on his own. Again. Fine, he spat out, turning to leave. But when this city starts to burn, remember who tried to warn you. He needed confirmation, something concrete beyond the coded messages. Thorne wouldn't be operating alone. He'd need a network, a support system. Bishop drove aimlessly, retracing Thorne's known haunts from years ago. A desperate gamble, he found them in the shadow of the old steel mill. A group of 5, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and fanaticism. They were unloading crates from a nondescript van, their movements furtive and hurried under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. He recognized one of them, a former tech specialist from their old unit. Riley years had added lines to his face, but the haunted look in his eyes was unmistakable. Bishop pulled the Mustang to a halt, the roar of the engine cutting through the night. Riley! He yelled, stepping out of the car. Riley froze, his eyes widening in recognition. The others turned, their hands instinctively reaching for concealed weapons. Bishop, Riley said, his voice barely a whisper. You shouldn't be here. What are you doing, Riley? Helping Thorne? You know what he's planning? He's opening our eyes. John, that he's showing us the truth. Riley's voice was laced with a fervor that chilled Bishop to the bone. The system is broken, and someone has to fix it. Before Bishop could respond, a sharp crack echoed from the direction of downtown. A muffled boom followed seconds later, rattling the windows of the nearby buildings. A plume of black smoke billowed into the night sky. Panic erupted, the group scattered, abandoning the crates and scrambling into the van. Riley hesitated, his eyes filled with conflict. Then he climbed in, and the van screeched away, disappearing into the maze of darkened streets. Bishop stared at the smoke rising in the distance. It was real. Thorne wasn't bluffing. The game had begun. The taste of ash returned, stronger this time, mingled with the bitter tang of failure. He tried to warn them, but no one had listened. Now, the city was paying the price, unveiling the motive. The stale brew had long turned frigid, its bitter tang clinging unpleasantly to Bishop's palate. He pivoted in his squeaking chair, its aged leather groaning, and fixed his gaze on the illuminated screens displaying Thorne's enigmatic missives. They weren't the rantings of a lunatic, not quite. That a pattern existed, a subtle design amid the seeming chaos. That it wasn't avarice or dominance fueling Thorne, but revelation. Bishop rubbed his bristly chin. Thorne wasn't merely aiming to obliterate the city. He sought to unveil a hidden truth. A festering sore within the very organization he once served. He accessed the archived files Thorne had alluded to in his latest transmission, Project Nightingale. A clandestine operation, purportedly terminated years prior after complications. Bishop navigated the heavily censored documents, assembling fragmented insights, unsanctioned observation, targeted killings camouflaged as accidents. Manipulation of foreign powers. The standard sordid affairs. Only. Magnified exponentially. Then he unearthed it. A memorandum, concealed deep within the Nightingale records, detailing the calculated victimization of a civilian populace to experiment with a novel bioweapon. The casualty figures were appalling. The concealment more so. The agency had interred it all, purging the occurrence from the annals with ruthless efficiency. A surge of revulsion swept through Bishop. He'd witnessed reprehensible acts, committed even worse, but this represented a new echelon of wickedness. Thorne wasn't simply a renegade operative. He was a truth-teller, driven to extremes by the very corruption he was seeking to expose. He slammed his fist against the desk, making the monitors tremble. "Damn it," Bishop murmured. He could have approached me. We could have navigated the established channels. But he knew that was a fallacy. The established channels were choked with the same muck Thorne was attempting to unearth. His phone vibrated. A trace on Thorne's most recent communique. A rendezvous point, situated in the city's underbelly. Bishop seized his jacket, the hide feeling cool as it brushed his skin. "Showtime," he muttered to the Mustang, patiently awaiting him in the garage. The engine roared to life, a metallic predator awakening from its slumber. The rendezvous was located in the intricate network of tunnels beneath the city. Sewers, subway arteries, derelict service corridors, a vermin's paradise of cement and steel. The atmosphere felt dense and oppressive, thick with the stench of decay and damp earth. Bishop slipped through the tunnels like a specter, his footfalls reverberating in the suffocating silence. He located the site, an unremarkable recess, distinguished by a faded symbol daubed on the wall. 2 individuals, cloaked in dark garb, were present. They seemed anxious, on edge. Thorne's confederates. "Agency business," Bishop announced, his tones slicing through the quiet. "Thorne's whereabouts?" The two men exchanged glances. 1 reached inside his coat. Bishop reacted instantly. He moved with unexpected swiftness, disarming the man before he could produce his weapon. The other cohort fled, vanishing into the gloom. Bishop discarded the weapon and gave chase to the escaping figure, the pursuit drawing them deeper into the labyrinth. The air grew stifling, the odor sharper. They burst into a disused subway station, the tracks stretching endlessly into the darkness like bottomless abysses. The cohort leaped onto the tracks, darting between the electrified rails. Bishop pursued, adrenaline coursing through him. He had to apprehend them. He had to locate Thorne. The cohort clambered onto the platform on the opposite side, turning to confront Bishop with a smug grin. "He's long gone," he shouted. "You can't impede him." A train thundered into the station, its lights blinding. The cohort vanished into the throng of waiting commuters. Swallowed by the city's anonymity, Bishop remained on the platform, his breath ragged, the vibration of the train resonating through him. He had failed. Thorne remained at large, his agenda still underway, and Bishop was running out of time. But he grasped that Thorne's intention was to reveal the agency's dark secrets. What Bishop couldn't fathom was the extent to which Thorne was prepared to go to achieve it. And that terrified him above all else. Ticking clock. Bishop's breath hitched as the final wire, a deceptively innocent shade of sky blue, parted under the blade of his Swiss Army knife. The digital display on the timer blinked, then froze at 00:01. He sagged against the grimy brick wall of the alleyway, the metallic tang of fear still clinging to his tongue. 3 down. How many more? He wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of grime across his forehead. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, a symphony of impending chaos he knew all too well. He glanced at the crumpled map Sarah had provided, each neutralized bomb site marked with a shaky X.3 smaller devices, strategically placed to cause maximum panic and disruption. Thorne was good, damn good. His phone buzzed. "Sarah," he answered, his voice rough. "Another one down. Bishop, we just got an intel drop. It's bad. Really bad." Her voice was strained, laced with a fear that mirrored his own. "Spit it out, Sarah." "The next one. It's not small. We're talking several hundred pounds of C4, located beneath the Grand Central Market. Rush hour is about to start. Grand Central Market." The image flashed through his mind. The throngs of shoppers, the vibrant chaos of vendors hawking their wares, the families grabbing a quick bite at a massacre waiting to happen. "Coordinates?" he barked, already moving towards the Mustang. "Sent to your GPS, Bishop. Be careful. This could be a trap." He ignored the warning. Caution was a luxury he couldn't afford. The Mustang roared to life, the throaty rumble of the engine a familiar comfort in the face of impending doom. He tore through the city streets, weaving through traffic with a reckless abandon that bordered on suicidal. Every second was a lifetime. The scene at Grand Central Market was a maelstrom of flashing lights and frantic activity. Police officers struggled to control the surging crowd, their voices lost in the rising tide of panic. The air crackled with tension, thick with the scent of exhaust fumes and desperation. He found the access point Sarah had marked, a service entrance tucked away behind a row of overflowing dumpsters. The heavy steel door was locked, but a swift kick, fueled by adrenaline and grim determination, sent it crashing inward inside. The air hung thick with the musty smell of damp concrete and decay. He descended the narrow, winding staircase, the darkness pressing in around him. The only sound was the steady drip, drip, drip of water, each drop echoing like a death knell. He found it in the heart of the building's support structure. A massive, crudely constructed bomb, wires snaking out like venomous tendrils. This wasn't Thorne's usual handiwork. IT was brutal, efficient, designed for maximum devastation. The digital timer glowed menacingly. 00:27:14. He pulled out his tools, his hands moving with a practiced precision honed over years of defusing death traps. But something felt wrong. The wiring was too random, too chaotic that IT didn't make sense. Then he saw it. Small, innocuous-looking module tucked away in a corner of the device, a receiver. Thorne wasn't relying on a simple timer. He was using a remote trigger. He grabbed his phone, his fingers fumbling with the touchscreen. "Sarah, the timer is a decoy. This thing is remotely activated." "Damn it! We suspected as much, but couldn't confirm. We're trying to trace the signal. Trace it faster. He could detonate this thing any second." Bishop began scanning the circuit board, his mind racing. He needed to find the kill switch, the override, anything to sever the connection. Suddenly, he noticed a pattern. A series of seemingly random sequences within the wiring, repeated and interwoven in a complex, almost elegant design. IT wasn't chaos, IT was code. "Sarah, I think I know what he's doing," he said, his voice tight with realization. "He's using an algorithm, a complex sequence to trigger the detonator. It's not random. It's a system. An algorithm? What kind of algorithm? I don't know yet, but I think I can crack it. Give me time." He could feel the clock ticking, not just on the bomb, but on the city itself. Thorne wasn't just trying to cause destruction. He was playing a game, a twisted, deadly game with thousands of innocent lives as the pawns, and Bishop was running out of time. The air grew heavy, laden with the metallic tang of fear, the taste of failure, confrontation on high. The wind keened across the parapet, a mournful dirge that lashed Bishop's coat against his legs as he approached Thorne, against the rhythmic pulse of the comm tower's blinking lights. The man stood as a diminutive silhouette, yet his very presence throbbed with menace. Far below, the metropolis unfurled, an illuminated scroll of blissful ignorance. "Marcus," Bishop called out, his words taut against the gale. "It's finished. Relinquish it." Thorne remained motionless. "Relinquish it? John, haven't you understood anything? It should have concluded ages ago. We offered them opportunity, we sacrificed for them. And their reward? They transformed us into abominations." Bishop halted a few paces away. He discerned the flash of metal in Thorne's grip, a small cylindrical object. A trigger. "What are you ranting about?" Thorne finally pivoted, a spectral smile gracing his features. "Recall Operation Nightingale. Syria. Our mandate was intelligence, nothing more. But the data we furnished. It served as justification for aerial assaults on civilian populations. Hundreds perished, John. Hundreds. Classified as acceptable losses." He flung an object towards Bishop's feet. It scraped across the concrete, settling near Bishop's boot. A data stick. "That's merely the genesis." Thorne amplified, his voice battling the wind's roar. "Examine it, John. Witness for yourself. Years of deceit, fabricated hostilities, assassinations cloaked as misadventure, we were instruments. John, expendable pieces in their depraved scheme. Bishop hesitated, then stooped to retrieve the drive. The alloy chilled his fingertips. He inserted it into the tablet he'd carried. Lines of cipher cascaded across the display. Classified documents, photographs. Visions of ruination he'd fought to suppress. The faces of children, contorted in their death throes, reports detailing classified endeavors. He'd only caught murmurs of operations that depicted an agency divorced from morality. His stomach roiled. This cannot be authentic, Bishop whispered, his voice fragile. Oh, it's authentic, John. More substantial than any truth you've ever known. And they'll rebury it all if I fail to act decisively, that they'll perpetuate their game, and further innocence will succumb. Thorne hoisted the detonator. This city. It's a rude awakening. An exhibition of their capabilities. Perhaps then, at long last, people will see. Bishop clutched the tablet, his knuckles bleached. Uncertainty gnawed at him. A corrosive acid dissolving his allegiance. He had witnessed things. Events he'd attempted to excuse, to isolate. But this resonated differently. There exist alternatives. Marcus. Bishop entreated, his voice regaining resonance. We can unveil them. Appeal to justice. Thorne emitted a harsh, mirthless laugh. Justice? John, they embody justice. They're all complicit. There exists no one to trust. He retreated a step, drawing closer to the building's edge. The tempest battered him, threatening to wrench him from his precarious foothold. Don't enact this, Marcus. It's already in motion, John. The countdown has commenced. Now, are you aligned with me, or opposed? Bishop snapped the tablet shut. The gravity of the revelations weighing him down, he regarded Thorne. At the frenzy in his gaze, at the righteous indignation that consumed him, he glanced down at the city, at the unsuspecting lives ebbing away below. I cannot, Marcus, he stated, his voice firm. I will not permit you to perpetrate this. Thorne's visage hardened. Then you have chosen your camp. He surged forward. Bishop reacted instantly, casting aside the tablet and meeting Thorne's onslaught head-on. Years of preparation surfaced, instincts honed by countless assignments. Thorne possessed speed, fueled by adrenaline and fury, but Bishop was stronger, more controlled. The clash was fierce, a frantic contest for supremacy at the precipice of annihilation. Impacts landed with sickening crunches, the wind magnifying the sounds of their struggle. They wrestled, each striving for dominance. The detonator a perpetual threat. Bishop succeeded in disarming Thorne, sending the trigger spiraling across the rooftop. Thorne lurched backward, blood tracing a path from his split lip. He spat onto the concrete. You simpleton. You presume you're rescuing them? You're merely delaying the inevitable. Bishop advanced, his expression grim. It need not transpire thus. Marcus. We can still rectify this. Thorne simply laughed anew, a fractured, desolate sound that he attacked once more, this time aiming for Bishop's windpipe, redemption and rebuilding. The signal flatlined precisely as Bishop anticipated. The makeshift console's display dissolving into a snowstorm of static. Thorne had telegraphed a failsafe. Bishop yanked the wires from the detonator, rendering it a paperweight. Dead man's switch? He growled, already in motion. The certainty struck him with brutal force. Thorne wasn't leaving any wiggle room. He bolted back to the control panel, the air stinging with acrid ozone and the reek of melted polymers below. The city throbbed, uncaring that he stabbed at the override sequence, his fingers a blur across the keys. Each tap was a wager, a fervent supplication, a long shot, something gathering dust in the back of his mind. But the metropolis's fate balanced on it. The explosion detonated ahead of schedule. A shockwave hammered him, flinging him against the reinforced concrete. Metallic rain pattered from the fractured ceiling. The taste of copper filled his mouth. Thorne had opted for proximity, amplifying the devastation. Bishop hauled himself upright, dismissing the white-hot agony in his shoulder. He had scant seconds. The core charge, nestled deep beneath the central plaza, stood primed that he could almost hear its low thrum, a malignant note swelling toward a Crescendoed in his mind's eye. He mapped the network. The insidious spiderweb of explosives Thorn had spun beneath the streets. He flashed on forgotten schematics, flow charts, the simulations they'd endlessly iterated, simulations designed to preempt this very nightmare. He redirected the energy, shunting the surge into a chain of secondary charges strategically positioned along the riverbanks. A dormant contingency plan, conceived years ago as a bulwark against terrorist incursions, now represented his only salvation. At a calculated risk, a surgical demolition to skirt utter obliteration. The ground convulsed. The structure groaned, its bones protesting. Bishop braced, clamping onto a steel girder. He felt the earth shudder, the tectonic plates moaning under duress. The air crackled with static, then a hush. He staggered from the crippled edifice, the biting tang of smoke invading his lungs. Above, the sky resembled a bruised canvas, swirled with ochre and midnight. The riverfront had vanished, replaced by a smoldering cavity. Water rushed to fill the abyss, hissing on contact with the molten substrata. Yet the city, the pulsating heart of it, endured, battered, wounded, but extant. Sirens keened in the distance, a symphony of sorrow and hope. That he watched as people crawled from the wreckage, their faces masks of bewilderment. Some wept openly, others stared into the middle distance, unseeing. The atmosphere hung thick with grit and the metallic scent of ruin. That he knew Thorn was finished. He'd pushed all his chips onto the table and lost. A shard of regret pierced Bishop. That he remembered Thorn green, idealistic, burning with a fierce conviction. The machine had chewed him up, leaving a warped effigy of his former self. The cleanup commenced before the smoke even dissipated. That a legion of first responders descended, battling infernos, extricating survivors, struggling to impose order. Bishop observed from the fringes, a specter in his own domain. Exposure of the agency's involvement exploded within hours. Leaked files, incriminating memos, proof of venality and collusion saturated the internet. A special counsel was assigned, and the agency's command structure summarily purged. The old guard vanished, supplanted by a new wave determined to reclaim public trust. Bishop remained. He wouldn't run this time. He gravitated toward the renewal endeavors, donating his time and proficiency. He assisted in clearing rubble, aided in erecting temporary shelters, and dispensed counsel to the engineers tasked with restoring the city's vital infrastructure. The undertaking proved grueling, physically and emotionally. Every brick laid, every beam fortified, represented a stride toward recovery. He perceived the city's spirit rekindle in the countenances of the volunteers, in the fortitude of the spared. One evening, as the sun sank, daubing the horizon with apricot and violet, he stood upon the re-established riverbank. The scars of the blast remained stark, yet the air vibrated with a renewed sense of possibility. He watched children playing, couples entwined, families gathered for twilight picnics. Life was returning, reclaiming its space. He considered the Mustang, gathering dust in the garage. He allowed himself a smile. There was time for that. There was time for everything. The city had been shattered, but it was healing. So was he. The specters of his past still hovered, but their grip had loosened. He had discovered a measure of solace, sense of purpose amidst the wreckage. He was home. And this time he was planting roots.